None of them matter.
Yeah, it's kind of wild to think about.
Right, because your entire life, your whole trajectory is actually dictated by just three choices. Welcome to this deep dive. We have a highly conceptual mission today, tailored specifically for you, the listener.
Very specific mission, yeah.
Usually we are parsing through, dense academic papers or massive data sets.
Or lengthy historical biographies, sure.
Exactly. But today, the source material on the table is profoundly concise. We are analyzing the core framework of a work titled The Architecture of Destiny.
Which is a fascinating title on its own.
It really is. And we are specifically focusing on a single foundational concept contained within it called the three decisions that change everything.
It is just a masterclass in extreme minimalism. I mean, we're literally dealing with just a handful of words here.
Just a handful, yeah.
But the conceptual weight behind those specific phrases acts as this massive philosophical bottleneck. It kind of forces us to strip away the noise of modern life and look purely at the structural mechanics.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to make sense of how a handful of words can carry that much weight, well, we have to look at the linguistic tension they set up.
Right, exactly.
Let's start with that overarching title, The Architecture of Destiny. On its face, putting those two words next to each other feels like a total contradiction.
Oh, absolutely. They seem to belong to completely different paradigms of how human beings operate.
Right, like they just don't belong together.
What's fascinating here is the deliberate collision of those two paradigms. If we break this down conceptually, destiny and architecture are historic enemies.
Historic enemies, I like that.
Yeah, because historically, destiny is passive. It implies a preordained, unchangeable sequence of events, you know? You look at ancient mythologies like the Greeks with the fates spinning the threads of human lives.
Or even various deterministic philosophies, where destiny implies that the outcome is already written in stone.
Precisely. You are not the driver, you are cargo.
Right, it's the classical idea of fate. You can try to run away from the oracle's prophecy, but your very act of running away is what fulfills the prophecy.
Yes, the classic tragic irony.
You have zero agency. It's just happening to you.
Right, so destiny implies absolute surrender to a predetermined path. But then the text violently interrupts that ancient concept with the word architecture.
Which is a totally different vibe.
It is. Architecture is the ultimate expression of human agency and deliberate planning. It requires intention, physics, and material science.
Foresight, too. An architect doesn't consult an oracle to see if a building will stand up, right?
No, they calculate the load-bearing requirements, they draft blueprints, they impose order on raw materials.
So by forcing those two words together, the framework is basically rejecting both extremes. It is saying life isn't purely a mythological destiny where you have no control.
Exactly, but it is also acknowledging that you aren't a god who can just manifest anything out of thin air.
Right, you are working with pre-existing materials. I was thinking about the mechanics of this, and an analogy actually came to mind.
Oh, I'd love to hear it.
It is like being handed a very specific, totally unchangeable plot of land. That land is your destiny.
Ah, I see where you're going with this.
You don't get to choose if your plot is on a sunny coastline, or on the side of a jagged mountain, or, in the middle of a dense, sinking swamp.
Right. That starting condition is just handed to you.
Exactly. It is your genetics, the era you were born in, the socioeconomic realities of your childhood. You cannot change the topography of the land you were given, but the architecture.
That's what you build on top of it.
Yes, you have total control over the blueprint of the house you build on it.
I really like the plot of land idea, but, let's not oversimplify the engineering there. Because the land severely limits the architecture. You can't just build a glass-walled skyscraper on a swamp without, millions of dollars of subterranean engineering.
Deep foundational pylons and all that.
Exactly. The architecture of destiny isn't about limitless freedom where you can just think positive and build whatever you want. It is about navigating strict, sometimes brutal constraints.
That is a really crucial distinction for the listener. It is not a blank canvas.
Far from it. True architecture is defined by how it responds to constraints. If you get a rocky cliffside, you are highly restricted in your design.
But you also have the opportunity to anchor into bedrock, right?
Exactly. The text is challenging you, the listener, to stop lamenting the plot of land you were given and to stop pretending you can build something the land won't support.
It demands a hyper-realistic assessment of the raw materials of your life, followed by a highly deliberate design process.
It completely shifts the locus of control without denying reality.
Right, because if you just believe in pure destiny, you can throw your hands up when things get hard.
Oh, for sure.
You could say, well, the swamp swallowed my house. It just wasn't meant to be. It is a very comforting excuse, actually.
It absolves us of the cognitive burden of responsibility.
Yes, it really does. But if we apply this framework, if it's the architecture of destiny, suddenly you have to look at the swamp and say, well, I failed to calculate the soil density.
Right. I didn't drive the stilts deep enough.
Exactly. You have to put on the hard hat. You are responsible for the structural integrity of your life.
Which brings us to the actual execution. Because if the title is the philosophy, the subtitle provides the mechanics of how this building actually took place.
The blueprint, so to speak.
Yes, the blueprint.
Right, which brings us to the heading from the excerpt, the 3 decisions that change everything. And I have to admit, here's where it gets really interesting and where I find myself deeply skeptical of the absolute nature of the text.
Really? Why is that?
Because it is so incredibly finite. The 3 decisions. Not 4. Not a daily system of habits. 3.
It is definitely a stark number.
Right, we started this deep dive by mentioning that humans make tens of thousands of choices a day. What to eat, what email to reply to first, whether to go to the gym.
The daily grind, basically.
Yeah, and we are told constantly by modern optimization culture that our lives are the sum total of these microscopic habits.
Yeah.
So I have to ask, is this text literally arguing that out of millions of choices over a lifetime, only 3 actually matter?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the restriction to 3 is a profoundly necessary cognitive intervention. Let's look at the psychology of modern decision-making.
Okay, lay it on me.
We live in an era of unprecedented choice, and it has led to massive cognitive overload. We suffer from decision fatigue.
Oh, absolutely. I feel that every day.
Because we assign the same psychological weight to choosing a brand of toothpaste as we do to choosing a career path.
Oh, yeah, we agonize over everything. The micro-optimizations feel just as urgent as the macro directions.
Exactly. And that is a structural failure. In architecture, there is a fundamental difference between interior design and structural engineering. The 35,000 choices you make a day, that is interior design. That is picking out paint colors, choosing throw pillows, rearranging the furniture.
You can repaint a wall 100 times.
Right. It might change the mood of the room, but it will not keep the roof from caving in.
I love that. So the 3 decisions are the load-bearing walls.
They are the foundation pours. They are the placement of the steel beams. When the text says the 3 decisions that change everything, it is violently cutting through the noise of the mundane.
It is demanding a hierarchy of choice.
Exactly. It is forcing us to separate a mere preference from a true decision, and that distinction is vital.
Vital how?
Well, if you look at the etymology of the word decision, it comes from the Latin decider, which literally means to cut off or to kill.
To cut off. Wow. That implies a finality that most of our daily choices just don't have.
They really don't.
I mean, if I choose chicken for lunch, I haven't killed off the possibility of having fish for dinner.
Right. But a true decision, one of the 3 the text points to, well, it requires the permanent death of alternative futures.
The permanent death. That is intense.
It is. When you pour a concrete foundation, you are killing off the possibility of putting the house 10 feet to the left. It is permanent.
And this is why humans are notoriously terrible at making large-scale decisions, right? We are wired for loss aversion.
We hate losing things more than we like gaining things.
Precisely. Cognitive science tells us that the psychological pain of losing an option is roughly twice as intense as the pleasure of gaining one.
That makes perfect sense.
So when we stand at a major crossroads in life, say, choosing to permanently relocate to a new country, or committing to a lifelong partner.
Or shifting our entire professional identity.
Yes, we aren't just choosing a path. We are actively executing every other possible life we could have lived. We are cutting them off.
That is heavy. It is practically a grieving process for the lives we didn't choose.
Exactly. And no wonder we prefer to focus on the 35,000 meaningless choices. It is a delay tactic.
Oh, totally. If I just focus on optimizing my morning routine, I can pretend I don't have to pour the concrete on that massive career choice.
It is the ultimate procrastination. We busy ourselves with the paint colors so we don't have to face the terrifying permanence of the structural beams.
This framework of 3 decisions removes the ability to hide in the minutia. It forces you to acknowledge that your destiny will not be shaped by your morning routine.
It will be shaped by the very few terrifying moments where you had to permanently cut off an alternate future.
So mechanically speaking, how do we actually identify these load-bearing moments? I mean, if the text is right and there are only a handful of these massive architectural pivots in a lifetime, how do we know we are standing in front of one before it's too late?
That is the golden question, right? Because the text doesn't list them. It doesn't say decision 1 is marriage, decision 2 is career.
And it cannot list them because the architecture is entirely dependent on that initial plot of land we discussed earlier. The decisions that architect your destiny will look entirely different from mine.
But the mechanism for identifying them is universal.
Yes. You identify a structural decision by the presence of a specific kind of fear.
The fear of the cutoff.
Exactly. You look for the moment where keeping your options open becomes more destructive than making a choice. A load-bearing decision is characterized by the irreversible sacrifice of a backup plan.
So if you can easily undo it, it's not one of the three.
Right. If you can gracefully pivot back to where you started 6 months later, you were just rearranging furniture.
The three decisions that change everything are the ones where, once executed, the bridge behind you is entirely burned. You are now standing in a new paradigm, and you must build from there.
That makes a lot of sense. It is the difference between a reversible experiment and an irreversible commitment.
And framing it as exactly 3 decisions is a brilliant heuristic. Whether it is actually 3, or maybe 4 or 5, the number is small enough that it forces hypervigilance.
Right. If you genuinely believe you only get 3 foundational pores in your life, you aren't going to do it on autopilot.
You approach it with reverence. You stop viewing life as an endless runway of infinite possibilities, which is a modern illusion, by the way.
It really is.
And you start viewing it as a finite engineering project. You realize that the materials are limited, the time is limited, and the structural pivots are rare.
It also means you have to forgive yourself for the 35,000 daily choices if you mess up your schedule or say the wrong thing in a meeting.
Or buy the wrong car.
Yeah, that is interior design.
Yeah.
It might be annoying, it might be an expensive mistake, but it didn't ruin the architecture of your destiny. The house is still standing.
That is the hidden comfort in this severe minimalism. It grants you permission to fail at the micro level, provided you are paying attention at the macro level.
Okay, I have to say my brain is firing on all cylinders with this.
So what does this all mean?
To synthesize it.
Yeah, if we step back and synthesize this incredibly dense conceptual deep dive, the architecture of destiny is ultimately about recognizing constraints and identifying permanence.
It rejects the passive waiting game of fate.
But it also rejects the exhausting modern myth that every tiny habit dictates your future. Instead, it posits that life is a structural process defined by a handful of monumental, terrifying, irreversible choices.
So the load-bearing walls, the moments where you deliberately cut off alternative futures.
Exactly.
This raises an important question for you, listening right now. We live in an information ecosystem that constantly bombards us with urgent trivialities.
Drowning in data, really.
Right, telling us to optimize our sleep, our diets, our workflows, treating every minor input as a life-altering variable. This source material acts as a striking minimalist intervention against that cognitive overload.
It really does.
It demands that you pull focus away from the daily noise and ruthlessly evaluate the structural integrity of your overarching trajectory.
It forces you to look at the actual blueprint rather than the paint swatches. Which brings us to a final thought. Something for you to mull over as you step back into the noise of your own 35,000 daily choices.
I love this part.
If you had to look back at the architecture of your life right now and trace the structural pillars of your current reality, well, what were the first 2 decisions that changed absolutely everything?
And more importantly,
Yes. If you look at the trajectory you are on today, are you currently on the verge of making the third?